Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Tēnā koutou nā mana here, no mai, hire mai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. We welcome you into this circle of community. Welcome into this space made sacred by Auckland Unitarians for 116 years. As we gather together this morning, may we learn to recognize and affirm the pieces of possibility, the bits of good we bring. May we encourage rather than control, love rather than possess, enable rather than envy. Allowing our individual gifts to weave a patchwork of peace, the soft blue, deep blue of sensitivity and understanding, the red energy of creativity, the white heat of convictions, the risky, fragile green of new growth, the golden flashes of gratitude, the warm rose of love. Each of us is indispensable if we are to minister to a broken and wounded world. Together in our gathered diversity, we form the creative whole. So be it. So now, come, let us worship together. My opening words are by Julia Cameron. Most of us are not raised to actively encounter our destiny. We may not know that we have one. As children, we are seldom told we have a place in life that is uniquely ours alone. Instead, we are encouraged to believe that our life should somehow fulfill the expectations of others, that we will or should find our satisfactions as they have found theirs. Rather than being taught to ask ourselves who we are schooled to ask others. We are, in effect, trained to listen to others' versions of ourselves. We are brought up in our life as told to us by someone else. When we survey our lives, seeking to fulfill our creativity, we often see we had a dream that went glimmering because we believed, and those around us believed, that the dream was beyond our reach. Many of us would have been, or at least might have been, done, tried something if we had known who we really are. We light this chalice with thanks for the flame of hope, the heat of righteous anger, the warmth of compassion, and the fire of commitment. May they bubble the cauldrons of transformation. We light this chalice for the good earth beneath us, around us, and within us. May we take this clay and co-create a new realm of justice and beauty. We light this chalice for these and more. We accept our gifts and commit to building, sculpting, painting, singing, and dancing them to life, to abundant life. On the third Sunday of the month, this congregation's offering goes to the work of peace and social justice. And part of that is that we ask someone from Peace and Social Justice to talk a little bit about the work. And I want to hand over the mic, or you can come up here if you wish, to Paul.
Hi everyone, yes, I'm Paul, and I've been asked by the Peace and Social Justice group to give an update on the dyslexia work that we're doing in Samoa and in Vava'u in Tonga. First of all, let me say that it's definitely a team effort, and contributions from Brenda and Gary Bendel and also Henry Van Roon are invaluable in our work helping children with severe problems learning how to read and write. Also, thanks to the Learning Staircase in Christchurch, and because that's the dyslexia program that we use. They developed it. Next month, I go to Samoa, where we've been working with their Ministry of Education, Sports and Culture. Partnering with the ministry, we ran a pilot program in 4 schools helping dyslexic children until staff reductions in the ministry created sustainability problems. In August, I hope to get things started again. As the pilot program is now finished, the church will be expected not to make any further financial contributions. In Vava'u, we're helping dyslexic children using a different model, this time partnering with the Vava'u Public Library Trust, a local non-governmental organization, in other words an NGO, in the capital Niafu, who run a small library. My trip up there last month went very well. I trained 2 new tutors and gave refresher training to 2 tutors who were with us last year. Travel and accommodation is of course self-funded, but the church supports salaries for the tutors and has purchased 6 laptops for student use, and this year a laptop for use by the local librarian who administers the dyslexia program. Each tutor works with 3 students twice a week after school in the library building. Most of our tutors in the AFU are graduates of a University South Pacific administered early childhood education program, and this is the only tertiary program taught live in Vava'u. We're supplying some extra employment for these graduates. Most work mornings in early child care centers, and we're also putting money directly into the Vava'u economy, where it has a multiplier effect. 100% of the contributions to our dyslexia projects go to the recipient countries, and in Tonga and Samoa, we're the only ones focused on helping dyslexic children. Although in Tonga, we're partnered with the Vava'u Library Trust, we've had discussions with the Tongan Ministry of Education and Training, who are keen to trial the program once a test for dyslexia for Tongan native-speaking students can be demonstrated. Fortunately, in Denmark, they have just developed and validated one that is independent of the language spoken, and we will begin using this in Tonga next year, so we hope to begin working with the ministry in the near future. Our success with the library in the AFU serves as an excellent exemplar, giving us substantial credibility. The Learning Staircase in Christchurch developed the STEPS literacy program for dyslexic children, and we have negotiated with them to allow delivery in developing Pacific Island countries free of charge. Normally, it's $400 per year for each school or for each tutoring center, so it's quite a gift from the Learning Staircase. We have also gained agreement from the Learning Staircase for them to assist in developing a version of the program in the local language, allowing help at an earlier age. Our small congregation here has achieved much with our efforts. However, to be sustainable, we need more help. This can be in terms of direct financial contributions or help in fundraising efforts, for example, in approaching other churches, or help in practical support for the program. Please see me after the service to ask any questions. I'm happy to discuss things and explain more about the project. And also, you can see the STEP software working and also the booklets. I think I'll just set my laptop up here so anyone who's interested can see the software working as well as the booklets. I'll just be up here on the organ stand. Right, thanks.
On our last day in Geneva, I was running out of museums to visit while Rachel toiled at the UN. I was down to either the history of the watch or the history of the International Committee of the Red Cross, better known as the ICRC. I chose the latter. It turned out to be the best of the many museums I had visited. I was deeply moved by the permanent exhibit on its humanitarian work. Since its creation in 1863, the ICRC's sole objective has been to ensure protection and assistance for victims of armed conflict and strife. It does so through its direct action around the world, as well as by encouraging the development of international human law and promoting respect for such law by governments around the world and all weapon bearers. It's a story about the development of humanitarian action, the Geneva Conventions, and the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. In an engaging manner, using sophisticated multimedia, the exhibit told of the ICRC's work to convince governments to adopt the first Geneva Convention in 1864. The treaty obliged armies to care for wounded soldiers, whatever side they were on, and introduced a unified emblem for the medical services, a red cross on a white background. In 1907, the Second Geneva Convention was adopted to extend protections to sailors in maritime war. During World War I, deficiencies in protecting prisoners of war and political prisoners became evident. In 1929, the Third Geneva Convention was adopted concerning the treatment of prisoners. The exhibit then spent considerable time on what the ICRC confesses its greatest moral failure. While it was aware of the atrocities being perpetrated on the Jews, they had no legal framework as an organization to intervene. At that time, the Geneva Convention only protected combatants in war, not civilians. In 1949, this omission was corrected with the Fourth Geneva Convention concerning the protection of civilians. Amongst other things, it gave ICRC representatives access to prisoners of war and political prisoners that they might advocate for them and keep them linked to their families. You might be wondering what this story has to do with creativity. The final exhibit was in a room with no audio-visual bells and whistles. There were just small niches in the walls, a lot of them. And each was an object of art, some primitive, some sophisticated, but all beautiful. They were made by prisoners out of whatever material they could find. Bits of wire, scraps of wood and paper, fragments of cloth, even a bar of soap. They had turned rubbish into something beautiful. Each had then been given to their ICRC representative, who was the one person in their life who treated them with respect, helping them to remember their humanity. I spent a long time in this room. It felt like a pilgrimage as I visited every niche, as if each was a shrine dedicated to creativity being a fundamental human right. I left touched by the sacredness of the room and surprised that I had never considered creativity as being a human right. But of course it is. Creativity has been part and parcel of our being from the beginning. 40,000 years ago, humans blew red ochre handprints onto cave walls. Over 300 caves in Spain and France contain mind-blowing art. This art is found from Romania to Africa to Argentina, from the pyramids to Stonehenge. Matthew Fox, a progressive Episcopal priest, writes in his book, Creativity, Where the Divine and the Human Meet, we are creators at our very core. Only creating can make us happy, for in creating we tap into the deepest powers of self and universe and the divine self. We become co-creators. That is, we create with the other forces of society, the universe, the God self, when we commit to creativity. Science writer Jonah Lehrer, in his book Imagination, How Creativity Works, echoes Fox less poetically. He simply says, creativity is our natural state. I can't argue with either, for now it seems obvious creativity is a human right. But why had that escaped my awareness? Part of the answer may be my failing to see myself as creative. Perhaps someone stepped on my budding creativity as a child. I don't know. If so, I don't remember. The only possibility was my violin teacher, who had a stroke and died after my lesson when I was 6. It was not surprising, as they spent most of my lesson in red-faced fury. In fairness, my efforts were awful. Whatever the reason, I had plenty of evidence that I wasn't creative. I don't play an instrument anymore. My singing is hardly melodious. If I have managed to draw a straight line, it is with a ruler. Having little sense of rhythm, my dancing is at best amusing. My attempts at poetry have been painfully prosaic. Now, I'm fully aware that my evidence was a truth excuses to not recognize, honor, or exercise my creativity. Being creative is not a competition. I once enjoyed playing the tuba in the band, even though it only had a humble role. I love singing as much as anyone, no matter how off-key. With Photoshop, I can now draw a straight line, and it indulged my artistic whims. I enjoy dancing no matter how gracelessly. My poetry still sucks. I'll just enjoy those with a gift, like T.S. Eliot, Mary Oliver, and Emily Dickinson. I think there is another reason I and others fail to see their creativity. In this particular early 21st century era of human history, there is a myriad of opportunities to become alienated from what is natural, to forget our connectedness, to grow distant from more grounded, holistic ways of living that might more readily nurture and call forth our creativity. We live in a society that doesn't typically invite us to be creative. In other words, we're being cut off from our natural state, denied our human right. There are probably numerous reasons for this. One that bothers me is the high value that has been placed on standardized testing in schools. We have been teaching our children with unprecedented singular focus how to comply with standards determined in bureaucratic offices. We have been educating our children into a very specific kind of intelligence, into a very rigid mold. We've been educating our children to think alike. We have not been educating our children to think around, underneath, above, through, and beyond standards. We have not been educating our children to transcend standards, which is precisely what creativity is for, and precisely what we need as a society in order to solve our most pressing problems and to make advances in science and technology, business and finance, the arts, even religion. Any field that impacts our lives and life on the planet. Jonah Lehrer describes human creativity as a bundle of distinct mental processes that combine to give rise to new thoughts, new images, new visions, new combinations, new connections, new ways of relating, new ways of solving problems, new melodies, new harmonies, and so on. This is our natural state. But we have been not currently educating our children into their natural state. If anything, we are educating them out of their natural state. And tests of American school children over decades verify this. While their intelligence is growing, their ability to be creative is falling, and has been doing so steadily since 1990. I can see why there's been a push to standardize our children. They can more easily be slotted into the economic system with less disruption. But the price for doing so is high. It is a means of depriving our children of their human right to be creative for their benefit and for all. For that reason, I'm delighted that New Zealand has only recently abandoned national standards. In a world that values standardization, I think there is another reason we fail to claim our natural state of creativity. It's risky. The literature on group creativity in institutions says in a corporate science lab, at a school or university, faculty, in government, in congregations, any place where people work together to reach certain goals. Over time, certain ways of thinking tend to become dominant. Certain methods of research or teaching tend to become standard. Certain business models tend to become more or less given. The way we do things, the way we think about things, the way we talk about things, the theories we accept as most accurate, the protocols we use, all of it over time becomes etched as if in stone. When this is the case, the people involved become boxed in. They become creatures of habit, often without recognizing they're just repeating long-established rote patterns. They become less and less creative, even when they're working in traditionally creative fields. In order to have and express true insight in such a calcified context, one must become essentially an outsider. One must raise their hand and say, wait a minute, there's another way. That's risky. It comes with potential costs, marginalization, alienation. What if I meet resistance? What if my boss isn't interested? What if my minister isn't interested? What if I'm perceived to be injecting too much chaos into the system? What if I'm perceived to be a troublemaker? What if they ignore me? Having and expressing a truly creative insight in an institution that isn't predisposed to innovation always entails some risk. Exercising our natural creative state requires some courage. We might find that courage when we remember the wholeness we felt in past efforts to be creative. We must stop sabotaging ourselves or letting a standardized world stifle our creative urge to be ourselves. Matthew Fox believes that we must return to an understanding of the artistic and creative urges as inherently spiritual. He laments the tendency in the West to make art the purview of professionals and reminds his readers that in the not-so-distant past, people had little opportunity to simply watch or listen to music or paintings or dance or theater. Before the advent of recording devices, most people made their own music, learned to draw and dance, and used their creativity in a variety of simple ways. Today, much of our creative spirit has been dampened by the tendency to think we have to be talented or strive for perfection in our creative endeavors. But as poet Lisa Colt writes, perfection is nowhere. And that's just what Matthew Fox is trying to teach about art and creativity and its place in our spiritual lives. It's a powerful message, and what I want to reiterate here. The act of creation whether a painting, a poem, a dance, a sermon, a lesson plan, or even a government report. This act of creating is one of the most spiritual things we can do. Why is this? Because our spirituality is, I believe, that part of our being which is continually evolving and growing in response to the world around us and the world within us. If we stifle our creativity, we run the risk of smothering our spirits. Spirit needs the lively interaction of creative hearts and hands and minds to keep it alive and growing. People can actually die when deprived of beauty. And I've seen the spiritual death that occurs when people lose or have been forced out of them, or have forced out of them the ability to be creative. So I challenge us all to take the risk of being creative. And let's see what it does to our spirits. If we can recognize that each of us will express our creativity in our own unique ways, take failure with good humor, learn from our mistakes, and keep trying new things, we will become a creative community making a difference in the world. It is our human right, after all. It is our natural state. So be it. For my meditation, the one and only time I ever threw clay on a pottery wheel, I was 11. I tried to make a vase. It looked pretty strange, but not pretty. It was uneven, and in places it looked like I'd tried to strangle it. My teacher was kind and told me she thought it was lovely over my protestations. She told me to wait until I glazed it and it had been fired in the kiln. As it happened, it was left too long in the kiln. The glaze curled and the color became mottled in its appearance. And yet, in its imperfection, it became beautiful. She entered it in the county fair. It even got her bloody ribbon. How many of our individual imperfections make our creative efforts beautiful? my closing words. Today we share in a blessing for losers, risk takers, all failures far and wide. Blessed are they who fall in the mud, who jump with gusto and rip the pants, who skin the elbows and bruise the ego, for they shall know the sweetness of risk. Blessed are they who make giant mistakes, whose intentions are good but impact has injured, who know the hot sense of regret and ask for mercy, for their hearts will know the gift of forgiveness. Blessed are they who have seen an E or a D or a C or any letter less than perfect, who are painfully familiar with the red pen and the labels as less than, for they know the wisdom in the imperfection. Blessed are they who try again, who dust off, who wash up, who extend the wish for peace, who return to sites of failure, who are dogged in their pursuit, for they will discover the secret to dreams. Blessed are they who refuse to listen to the naysayers, for their hearts will be houses for hope. Blessed are they who see beyond the surface of another, for they will be able to delight in the gift of compassion. Blessed are they who stop running the race to help a fellow traveler, who pick up the fallen, who stop for injured life, for they shall know the kindness of strangers. Blessed are they who wildly, boldly abandon winning, for they shall know the path of justice.